Hi and Merry Christmas, since we almost reached the Christmas time. Last video was received well by you, so I thought it would be good to share with you some additional thoughts and tricks, but this time focused entirely on the strings part. So without further wasting your Christmas preparation time, let's jump into the first one. Let's start with the short aggressive strings, and this one is mostly important and useful when you have the, let's say, hybrid orchestration, so the orchestration which requires from you especially the ostinatos of the strings, and you want to make these ostinatos cut through the mix easily, so with this punch aggression. And this pertains especially for the low parts of the strings. I always struggled with the situation when my workhorse library Cinematic Studio Strings has a lack of the room and a little bit of definition, and it's totally normal bearing in mind the circumstances in which the library was recorded and the size of the ensemble. But in this particular circumstances, so these ostinatos of cellos did not have this punchy sound, this aggression of the ostinatos, which was required in this particular situation. So what is the trick for that? The trick is layering 3 patches or 3 VST libraries. First, your workhorse library, the second one which adds a little bit more room to the sound, and finally the solo VST library. So in my case, firstly, this is Cinematic Studio Strings. The second one, which adds the room, is Albion one. This is old one, but for my experience, it's still very useful and well produced. And last but not least, Cinematic Studio Solo Strings to add more definition to the sound. To show you what I have on mine, let's play the CSS cello spiccato patch by itself. And now let's add the Albion one as a more roomy sound, and Cinematic Studio Solo Strings. So as you can hear, especially this low end of the ending of the phrase is punchy, and this is something which I'm looking for a long time. And in this situation, the circumstances, this layering 3 VSTs is very useful and very practical. So now let's listen the short phrase of the short staccato strings with and without adding additional layers. The second one is also connected with the short articulation of the strings, but it pertains to the orchestration of our composition. So what I have on mind, when we are trying to achieve a big string ostinato sound, we often fall into the habit of bringing every instrument at the same time of the string section. From my experience, it's actually not the best approach for that, and instead it's much more effective to restrict yourself and think in terms of temporal implementation of the instruments. So for example, this is especially important in the lower register. You can let the double bass enter at the beginning of the phrase, in the build-up, or right at the very end of the phrase. By doing this without increasing the overall volume of the instrumentation, we create the illusion of a bigger sound for our listener. So now let's listen the same phrase as previously, but firstly without implementation of lower strings temporarily, and after that with this implementation. The third one in the row is a Ricochet Effect, and it sounds like this in the reality. So why am I speaking about this effect? Because this effect can be easily reproduced with our VST libraries in some way, but also it can fill the gaps of the orchestration. So for example, you already orchestrated strings, woodwinds and the brass section. You implement some ostinatos of first violins, for example, to bring the momentum and motoric movement of your piece, but you still, even though, feel that something missing. And in this respect, the Ricochet effect is very useful. So how we can achieve this sound? We can use the tremolo patch of our dedicated VST library. So in my case, it's again Cinematic Studio Strings, but I also like to layer the regular section patch of the Cinematic Studio Strings with the solo patch. So Cinematic Studio Solo Strings to bring the definition of this tremolo ricochet effect even more for the listener. Speaking of playing the notes for this patch, you can simply play the regular arpeggio chords as if you would play it for the regular spiccato patch of your strings. But if you feel that the playing on the tremolo patch is disturbing you, you can firstly play it on the patch, for example, for staccatos or spiccato strings, and after that you can replace this patch with the tremolo patch without any disturbance on your side. The fourth one is dedicated for string runs. Yeah, I know this is a tough topic, but usually from my experience, when it comes to achieving a convincing string runs effect using VST libraries, we quickly run into a limitation. Most libraries simply don't offer a dedicated patch design for string runs specifically, and even in the libraries that do include such patches, in my experience the results are often not fully satisfying, musically satisfying. Of course, we do have libraries with pre-recorded string runs, but that comes with two major downsides. Firstly, it usually requires investing in yet another library, and the second, we lose a lot of flexibility because we are focused and limited to the pre-recorded sections of the string runs. So what we can do instead? There are two main approaches. So the first one is using the Marcato patch of our VST libraries, which usually comes already with the legato instances. But what we can do if we do not have the Marcato? For example, we do not have our Marcato in the BBC Symphony Orchestra from Spitfire Audio. So the second approach is a little bit more involved, but also quickly to implement. We set the velocity of our legato patch to a very low value to intentionally trigger portamento transition, and after that we add another instance, this time using a spiccato patch from the same library. This is very important because we want to receive and keep this cohesive sound of our strings. And this combination allows us to shape fast runs manually. This is the first. And the second, we keep full control and musical flexibility of our composition and orchestration. And finally, let's talk about the repetitive notes, especially when we are dealing with the short articulations. The first instinct is usually to reach for a spiccato or a staccato patch. And while that works on paper, in practice it often results in very mechanical sound, far from what we would expect from a natural orchestral recording. Because of that, a much better solution from my experience is to use the measured tremolo patch and how it will sound. So let's open the measured tremolo from Cinematic Studio Strings, and as you can see we have this patch, and if we play one note we in reality trigger more than one. So for example, when I play the A, we can see two notes, and we can play the passages like this. And some VST libraries have this feature built in. As I showed you, Cinematic Studio Strings has this, but also from my experience, Spitfire Symphony Orchestra also has the measured tremolo. As far as I remember, it's named, bearing in mind the BPM in which the measured tremolo was recorded. By using a measured tremolo patch, we get a much more realistic result because our ostinato gains the natural flow of a live performance. And this realism comes mainly from the way the transitions behave between the end of the first note and the beginning of the following note. So now let's listen the short phrase with the implementation of the regular spiccato sound, and after that we will hear the same passage in this phrase but with the implementation of this measured tremolo. Thank you for staying till the end of the video, and what is more important, thank you very much for spending this year with me exploring orchestration, composition and overall production of music. I hope that upcoming 2026 brings even more creativity, music and constant improvements of our orchestral mock-up productions. Thanks for watching, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and see you in the next one.